I'm going to turn it over to her. Thank you, Kimberly.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. So I was just looking at, and I want to kind of step back in history about the prepaid surcharge and that legislation. And I actually worked on that legislation back in the day, a long time ago. And the reason that we have it set up today as based on wireless call volume is prepaid was our first big picture state remittance, state distribution model. So prior to that, we just had the local surcharge and really trying to get our arms around how do we successfully do this. The only way the carriers would support prepaid legislation was by point of sale. So that's where the surcharge is at the point of sale. It goes to the Department of Revenue. We needed to do that to keep it somewhat seamless for the retailers and for them not to oppose the bill and create a lot of issue. And then the algorithm, as PUC staff knows, and as everyone knows, is really from a wireless call volume to then how do we get that money back out to everybody. So the wireless call volume numbers are provided by CenturyLink, and then an algorithm is broken down. So X amount of wireless call volume, break that out by the total monies received from prepaid across the state. And that has been the case since inception of this legislation. So I know that we have reached out to Daryl and team in the past about the wireless numbers and really what makes sense and what our numbers show locally haven't matched with what the numbers have been as provided as our wireless call volume. So just thinking through, should we make a change? Is there a reason to make a change in prepaid distribution to make it something that is consistent and can't really be debated or influenced by testing of new 911 systems or towers going live, etc. And that's where I came back on most state things that we look at, we do through SIP sessions. So when we're talking about the state 911 surcharge, when we break out the tariff, it's all about concurrent SIP sessions. So I just wanted to look at numbers, and I don't want anybody to have a heart attack. So I'm glad I don't see anyone else's cameras, but hopefully you're all sitting down. So I asked Jolene to provide a year's worth of prepaid revenue across the state, and for us to take a look at what does that mean if we were to take that revenue and instead of breaking it down on the wireless call volume, we broke it out on 911 SIP session. Who would have an impact and who would not? And so I'm going to share my screen if that's okay, Jackie.
Absolutely, please do.
Okay. So you should see a spreadsheet now. And I'm going to make it larger. So what I did here was, again, these are numbers provided by Jolene to just take a look at what the total amount of surcharge is, and then the total number of SIP sessions and what it would be per SIP session. So it's basically taking the total amount received and then dividing that by the total number of SIP sessions. You'll notice that this number is different than maybe numbers that we have seen, but these are the numbers that are actually here and representative of all of the different agencies. And then doing the math and dividing it out, it would be $30,000 per SIP session. So a couple of, and this is again an annual difference. So the agencies that would have a shortfall, and I say shortfall just based on what they receive today, are reflected in red. Agencies and then everybody else that would actually have additional revenue are reflected in black font. My green is based on just another project I was looking at from the CCOA perspective. So what I noticed on this that I thought was interesting is when we think about surcharge and the conversations I've heard around the state about we have to build systems, and I know this is very true for for Larimer, I have to build a system that will support my tourist influx. So I have to have enough SIP sessions to pay for my tourists and the possibility that they're going to call 911, which we always see an increase from Memorial Day to Labor Day in Estes Park of 5.5 million tourists that come into that community. Same thing with our mountain communities as well, or even the different I-25, I-70, I-76 corridors. So what I did notice is those agencies that we've heard from that have that influx would actually have an increase in their revenue. So that's what I've done so far. To me, I'm curious about this. I'm not going to say I'm advocating that I think this is for sure the way that we should go. I think that it's interesting. And I think it may be something we want to consider, which is why I wanted to bring that up to this group to see what your thoughts were. And I know this is the first year looking at numbers, but I've checked my math. I had somebody else check my math, and I feel like my math is okay. But just wanted to throw this out to the committee and see what your thoughts are.
Thank you for doing all this work, Kimberly. My thoughts have always been that the wireless calculations have been dubious at best, and not necessarily, I think, the best way to do it in the past. However, I haven't seen how ECATS looks. And Daryl, I'm going to let you go. Thanks.
Yeah, so your total SIP session count is 551. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. And that's just based on adding up what the SIP sessions are on all of the authorities that are receiving revenue.
Okay,
And
I'm trying to pull up the latest list that we got from CenturyLink, and I know the number was higher on that, so I'm just wondering where the difference is, but we can take a look at that later.
yeah, and we should, right? I mean, I want to validate, and I'll share this spreadsheet if you guys think it's ready to be shared. I, of course, don't want to share things and have people panic and go, "Oh my gosh, we'd be losing $500,000," and I get all of that, and I just, again, if we're looking at 1 + 1 should equal 2. I think many agencies have had a hard time with numbers and prepaid distributions on wireless call volume. And so, Daryl, that's my concern is with the SIP sessions. However, if we can match like Ontario, they're getting revenue, but I think their SIP sessions are folded in to Montrose, and maybe Matt can speak to that. But I mean, so we have some of that pieces where I show that there's a wireless call volume distribution, but there wasn't a SIP session because another agency has their SIP session count. But still, it doesn't make my number go up higher than 551.
Yeah, I think there may be some errors on the SIP session numbers, but that doesn't. I don't think that'll make a huge difference overall. They'll make some differences to your numbers, so we should double check those. But generally speaking, I think the idea of using SIP sessions instead of wireless call volume count. I don't think the PUC has a dog in that fight. It would certainly make our job easier because we wouldn't have to track wireless call volume anymore to do the percentages. And it would potentially, I think, generally speaking, it would help the smaller agencies. The question is whether the larger agencies would be able to swallow that difference that they're seeing there.
And Daryl, that's what I saw specifically as well as the balance, I guess, across the state. And so when we start talking about the smaller agencies that, again, we know may not have a huge wireless call volume, but they have SIP sessions and they're building a 911 system to support an influx. And we see that they have a higher local surcharge. So I did see if that's a problem that we were looking at possibly trying to solve, that this could be a better distribution of that revenue across the state. An idea that we had as discussing it was that it doesn't, if we wanted to pursue this, it could be something that doesn't take effect right away to allow a good 12, 18 months So budgets aren't immediately impacted. So for example, El Paso Teller has a very large decrease, and same with Denver. It wouldn't be something like, oh, the bill passes and then it's done that same calendar year. It could be something that's written in where it says, hey, this is going to happen from a change, and it'll happen within the following calendar year, for example. So there's an opportunity there that we could do a slower implementation.
So Kimberly, how many agents, how many authority boards actually take a hit financially?
I think 11, Jackie.
11. Okay. And what I think I'd be interested to see, and once we get this spreadsheet, we could do some in-depth looking. I'd be interested to see what those boards' local surcharge is.
Great. Great
And
point.
what it would look like if they brought their surcharge up to the threshold, if that would make it a wash, if that makes sense.
So wait, so just to make sure I understand what their local surcharge is, and then if El Paso Teller brought their threshold up to 205, for example, if they would still have an impact.
Correct.
Yeah.
If there was some mathematical count, and it may not be 205, it could be 175 or whatever, but if they're increasing their, by, I guess, everyone having kind of the same surcharge rate, if that would help alleviate the 11 that take a financial hit is what I'm trying to say, I guess. It's early, sorry.
No, I think that's a great question, and I'd be happy to do that. From an ECATS perspective, what we have found, and we are new on ECATS, so the ECATS state project is our first exposure to ECATS. I'm sure some of you have had ECATS prior to the state ECATS. And what we are finding is it's all about how your phone system and the queue groups so that your line pools are in will result in different numbers. So it's not going to be somewhat error-free from what we're finding. Of course, we have 6 PSAPs, and so we're crunching numbers, and there's a lot of different ways you can look at numbers, a lot of different ways you can pull the numbers as it pertains to line pulls and what 911s are for what agency. And so I still worry, even with ECATS, that it may not be consistent or a good reflection of wireless call volume across the entire state. And I'm not sure even what percentage we are with that implementation. Kathy, do you know if we're at 80% now? From our last EZNet meeting, I wasn't quite sure if we knew exactly how many PSAPs are 100% complete.
I don't know exactly how many, but I know that they had a small handful left, so I would feel comfortable saying 80%. Oh, Jennifer.
There are 20 PSAPs that have not yet implemented ECATS.
So and then I guess the other piece of it is we paid for historical view, but we would have another year to be able to collect that data once they're done, to be able to have a good statewide. So once the 20 is done, then that kind of starts the statewide to be able to look at numbers. I was just thinking to compare even the wireless call volume based on ECATS compared to these numbers and how those numbers could change from how things are factored today and what CenturyLink provides today. So does anybody have anything else that they think would be good to look at? I've got Jackie's request of looking at what their local surcharge is. Daryl, just SIP session count so we can make sure we get all that figured out correctly would be awesome.
It would certainly bring things in line with how pretty much everything else is calculated or distributed on the concurrent session basis. I like that.
Yeah, Matt, that was my thought too, is just alignment, but then also numbers are numbers and there's no opportunity for them to be skewed and I'm not 100% sure what my numbers will look like this year, but we cut Jackson County, and I can tell you that we place wireless calls to test Jackson County, moving them over. So that agency that used to have maybe 10 wireless calls is going to look like hundreds for several months because of all the testing that we did and just troubleshooting everything that was going on up in that area with 911 outages and whatnot. So those are the kind of factors. Is that real call volume? Kind of, but not really. That's troubleshooting and testing and bringing systems online. And we all have some of that.
Yeah.
However, the SIP sessions eliminates that. So you don't have those different projects.
And it does, we're carrying extra concurrent sessions because of service to resort towns like Telluride. And, everything, as we all know, everything that's associated with that expanded service.
Right.
Daryl, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I was just going to say that the numbers that we've had available to us to use to calculate those percentages has always been suspect, because we started with the alley retrieval records, which CenturyLink did some sort of formula to it to try to remove duplicates for rebids. But those numbers I always suspected were inflated, and based on the numbers that we get from the IUP now, they were inflated by about 100%. We were counting 6 million calls per year instead of 3 million calls per year, which is what the count is now. And I know that how IUP counts those calls is going to be different than how ECATS counts those calls, because those calls are counted at the the IUP numbers are counted at the network level, whereas ECATS will be counting at the CPE level. So, yeah, I think there is something to be said for not having a lot of faith in the numbers, whereas with the SIP sessions, we know exactly how many SIP sessions each 911 authority has.
On that numbers count, Kimberly, I do find myself curious for maybe a little bit more explanation, maybe not today, about what you described as how even with ECATS, things may not be as they seem because of how your CHE may be providing the call detail records to the serial port to the ECATS.
Yeah, and happy to talk to you about that more offline, Matt. It really had to do with how our lines were put into what line pool, and then how you're pulling numbers. So again, we can talk about it just in case you guys have things set up differently. But it goes back down to what Daryl's point is just pulling numbers. Who's going to pull those numbers? How are you going to pull them? And are you going to be looking completely at the numbers, looking at the right line groups, and is it going to be
Sure. Yeah.
And that just makes me nervous, right? Because you don't want anything skewed, and we don't want something skewed for one agency or another agency. And that's where, if we're really trying to look at what is tried and true across the state, and if we're trying to look at numbers that we can validate, so it's all about validation and communication. And we surely don't want to, point fingers. Oh, this person's got more money. You can't, come on. We want to look at 20 SIP sessions or 20 SIP sessions, and we can validate those versus, well, they pulled it this way and that agency challenged it and then that agency won. And I just don't want any of that silliness.
Sure.
And then,
I'm sorry, Kimberly, when we were all looking at ECATS for our own needs and uses, but also for this purpose, right? There was a lot of talk about how ECATS wouldn't have this issue necessarily. And now maybe it does have this issue. So I think we might need to be prepared to talk about that. Because I think there's going to be a number of folks, I was one of them, that thought that the skewing issue would largely be resolved by having ECATS. And now here we're saying maybe not.
Maybe not. And I think to Daryl's point about where ECATS is pulling the numbers is even different, because not everybody, we've got different CPEs. We're not on the same CPE. And so I know Viper. I don't know Motorola. I don't know their product offering and how their ECAT solution is working. We paid for 13 months of old data to be archived in. Other agencies don't. So we even have a timing gap that it may take, I don't know how long, to be able to look at those numbers. So there's just a lot of pieces that impact wireless call volume. So again, I thought this was interesting, and I thought it from a big picture perspective of consistency and reliability as it relates to numbers and taking out any discussion or challenges around what's fair or right or just and what can and can't be proven. I thought SIP sessions was good. I don't like the impact to anybody, but when you're starting to look at small agencies having to build infrastructure to support call volume, and when we talk about local surcharges and increasing surcharges to meet the needs, but they don't have the resident base to have that local surcharge, again, I think that this does seem to balance it out.
And Kimberly, just a question on Otero. You have a comment there. I don't know what that comment is.
That's actually a math thing because it's a 0 here in this column because I didn't show them having SIP sessions. Again, Matt, I could be wrong, but I believe they have 0 SIP sessions, but they're still receiving a revenue for wireless call volume. And those SIP sessions, I think, are folded in under a different model. Matt, am I reflecting that right?
I think you're conflating Otero and Uray.
Oh, you know what, I am. Yep.
Otero is La Junta and Rocky Ford,
Yeah.
and they do have SIP sessions.
Yeah, so I have a document that had them with no SIP sessions. So yeah, so we need to validate the SIP sessions. That would be an important action item because they're getting a wireless call volume. But again, there's some document file that I reviewed that has like the final count of SIP sessions and it had them at 0. So I just need to get the best accurate document. And Daryl, Jennifer, if you guys can give that to me, that would be awesome.
So Kimberly,
Really, the one they filed just list them by PSAP, so I'm putting them in another spreadsheet that groups them by 911 authority, and I'll get that to you.
Oh, thank you so much.
yeah.
You're welcome.
So Kimberly, you're correct in not listing the Uray County Emergency Telephone Service Authority. They don't have their own PSAP. They essentially pass everything through us in Montrose. And so if they were listed there, then it would be correct as 0. But it's also appropriate that they're not listed there. And they understand that what would effectively be their share of such remittance revenues is basically passing through us to our shared PSAP.
And I was hoping to see Jeff Irvin on here because I know when they're similar to Douglas in they're dispatching Clear Creek now, and Douglas dispatches Elbert. But they didn't merge authority boards like Larimer and Jackson did. And so I know in Douglas County, we currently take our wireless counts and calculate what portion goes to Elbert. And so if we did that by SIP sessions, obviously Elbert would not get any funding from Prepaid unless we had some kind of agreement to give them a set amount or something from Douglas. So, and like I said, that's why I was hoping Jeff was on, because I'm not sure how Clear Creek County how their SIP sessions would work, since those would be rolled into Jeffco.
Right, and that's some great point. There could be some additional action items that these different authorities that have the contractual agreements that didn't do a complete regional merge would need to work through on who gets what money, and it could lessen their impact.
Is there anyone other than Shannon and I from Douglas on this call that has a shortfall? Amy?
Yeah, I'm with Boulder,
Okay.
but ours feels a little nominal compared to as I looked at Denver and Jefferson and some of those. But I agree though, if things are going to change, that a sufficient amount of notice, definitely more than 12 months, and make sure that, I just sent out the proposed 2025 budget. And then, of course, since as you all know, just the amount of time we need to push through a rate increase. Yeah, so I appreciate that you acknowledge that.
Thank you, Amy. And I do want to let this committee know that it starts first by our committee deciding, this committee deciding if this is something they want to move forward with. And if so, we bring that in front of the PUC task force. And if the PUC task force wants to move forward, it'll go to the legislative committee, which will have to rewrite legislation because the wireless calculations are written into legislation, and we would have to change 2911 102 or 103, Daryl.
Sorry, getting off of mute. It'd be 102. Oh, no, I'm
Okay.
sorry. I'm sorry. For prepaid, it'd be 102.5.
2.5. So we would have to change that language. And so that would have to go before a legislative session and pass there before anything would happen. And yes, in that language, we could also do a tiered or a time frame move in.
And I'll just throw it out there that if this is something that is favorable and feels like it is going to move forward, I mean, my next step is obviously getting all the stuff added in here, SIP sessions updated, and the surcharge piece to that question. But I also think one-on-one conversations with anybody in the red is critically important, and making sure that they see and understand. But from a finding bill sponsors and moving that forward, Lita is prepared to assist and to help charge that forward. We think that regardless of the impact, we just think that this is a really clean way to manage this and for success, regardless of ECATs or any other tools. Just because we think, again, that SIP session count is a tried and true number that we're managing various state initiatives and costs with.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. That was going to be my suggestion as well, that those that are in the negative would be reached out. So thank you.
So thoughts, comments from this committee, how do we want to move forward? I personally, even though there are shortfalls, I personally agree with Kimberly's assessment that SIP session is a better way to calculate because I have always been suspect of the wireless call volume. And as was talked about with the advent of ECATs, it's going to take a while before that number even settles out and settles down to be accurate, if it's even any better than what we have now. Again, that's my opinion. I think that I can't speak for the boards who are going to take a shortfall, and I do believe this needs to go before them before we have any kind of a vote from this committee. But I wanted to make sure that everyone on this committee that showed up today has a voice and can talk to them.
So Jackie, I think from my action item would be to get this spreadsheet updated with the numbers from Daryl and Jennifer, and then take a look at that local surcharge question that you posed, because I think it's an excellent question. And then I can send that document, I'm going to call it draft, not final, draft discussion document. But then I would also say that at that point, when the numbers are validated, and if this group can look at those numbers and we really know the impact, then I would be happy to personally reach out to each of the contacts of any authority that is going to be impacted to have that conversation one-on-one with them before it even goes to this committee again for a second time. I think we need to have and understand what their impact is and what they feel about it and how they can manage it and what they think they would need to be able to manage it. Is it, the 2-year slow roll for implementation? Is it an increase of a local surcharge and what that process looks like, et cetera? So I'd be happy to take the reach out as an action item as well.
That would be great. Thank you, Kimberly. So again, I think at task force this time, I'm going to mention that we are currently just looking at numbers, if that works for this committee.
I think that's great, because the last thing we want to do is present something that is not ready, and it's not ready, because I need to make sure the numbers are accurate as it relates to SIP sessions.
Correct. Thank you. Okay. Other comments, please go ahead. Matt, go ahead.
Would it be wise then to invite interested parties to take a look at the numbers at that time also? Or do you want to wait until the committee takes at least a consensus vote?
Well, I have to say that Boulder is the only one I see. Boulder and Douglas are the only ones I see here of the 11 that are going to take a hit on this committee today. And so I would be worried about taking any kind of consensus today.
No, I'm not asking for that. I'm saying when you talk about it during the task force meeting.
Yeah.
To say more than we're just looking at numbers, but also we invite folks who are interested to take a look.
Good idea. Okay, I will include that in my report, just so everyone here knows. I will not be at the task force this time. I will have a written report. So any of you who will be present who want to speak about this are more than welcome to.
I don't mind jumping in on that, Jackie. And Matt, to your point, absolutely, when the numbers are validated, the SIP sessions are validated, then I definitely think that more eyes is better, because then we can catch things, and we want to make sure that we have any gotchas identified up front.
Absolutely. And thank you, Kimberly, for covering for me on Thursday. But I do want to kind of get a feel from this group if they think this is worth moving forward. So again, like I said, my opinion is it is, but I can't speak for the boards that are going to take a hit. Amy?
Yeah, I mean, obviously no one ever wants to have a hit, but from what I'm hearing and understanding, I would support that it is continuing to be looked at. However, I'm not speaking on behalf of my board. just as far as, yeah, we'll obviously start having those discussions. But yeah.
Thank you, Amy.
You make valid points.
Oh, sorry, Amy, I'm talking over you. Go ahead.
I was just saying you all make valid points here.
Thank you. Anybody else would like to comment? I'd really appreciate feedback.
Crickets. I'll just reiterate, I think this is a good idea.
Thank you, Matt. Kathy? And Michael?
I think it's a good idea.
Michael, go ahead.
I apologize. I came late. I was just hoping you could scroll down so I could see my line. Not to sound selfish.
Hey, we all probably
Thank
looked at our lines.
Any other thoughts or suggestions?
Well, this is just a suggestion, but I think those authorities that have the largest numbers in the red probably need to be informed of this pretty quickly. Just they don't feel like it's coming out of left field. Looking at El Paso Teller with almost $750,000 there.
Agreed. Should I, as committee chair, let them know we're talking about this? Kimberly, what do you think?
So once I get the succession count correct and get the document in a more of a final form just to validate those numbers, then my intent was to reach out to each of them one-on-one. So I can do that as fast as I get the numbers. So I agree. I think the conversation needs to happen so it's not a, oh my gosh, what's going on type of thing. So yeah, I just want to validate the numbers. So I'm going to them with accurate numbers. Is it $100,000? Is it $500,000?
And I've been working on that spreadsheet while we've been talking, so you should have it to you probably this morning.
That's great.
Great. Yes, and I will be having a conversation with the Douglas 911 coordinator today. But yes, Kimberly, if we could get that out as soon as possible, that'd be great. I'd really like them to see it before Thursday. Because as everyone has said, we don't want Thursday them to go, whoa, what's going on?
So Jackie, I'm not sure if that's going to be
Possible.
feasible. Yeah, I mean, because I'll reach out, but from a phone call perspective. So I understood Thursday would be, hey, we're looking at this and we're looking at numbers, crunching numbers, and invite people to look at numbers as well. Of course, once the spreadsheet's ready to go, but not saying, oh, Denver, you're going to have an impact, and El Paso Teller, you're going to have an impact. I don't, because we just don't know yet until everything is finalized. So I was thinking that the converse, and we haven't taken this to the task force legislative committee or to the task force as a whole. So is it more of Thursday of a, hey, we're looking at this and these are the reasons why we're looking at it, consistency, reliability of numbers, etc., versus, and here's the final impact to everybody?
Oh, yeah, correct. I was
Okay.
not planning on giving any final impact on Thursday.
Okay.
In my report, none.
Okay.
Just
Great.
that we're looking at the numbers. Jennifer, go ahead.
Well, if it's helpful, and we can also put a link to this meeting recording into your standing report, so people who want to go back and learn more can watch the recording.
Do we want to do that before we have the spreadsheet kind of updated with all the correct subsessions? And
That's up to you. I'm just saying, we've also got this meeting that's recorded that you could put out as a resource if you wanted to.
yeah, I'm good with it. I just, because we've talked over and over that these aren't final, that this is just a draft.
Well, and they will hear that too if they watch the recording, but it'll at least give them an idea of, where the idea is coming from.
Any other thoughts or questions? Kimberly, again, thank you so much for all this work. I know that was a lot of work. And Jolene, also, thank you for providing those numbers.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All right, well, hearing no more comments or thoughts, we will present it as we are looking at these numbers. Do we want to schedule another meeting in a month? Would that give us enough time, Kimberly?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think a month is great.
A month from now would be Tuesday, August 6th.
APCO is that week.
That's the APCO week.
Okay, do we want, good, because that was my birthday. Do we want to look at the 13th?
13th is wide open, and happy birthday.
Thank you. Do we like this time slot?
Yeah, I'm open in the morning.
Yeah, morning is open.
Great. Jennifer, can you send out a invite for 9 a.m. on August 13th?
I can.
Great. Thank you so much, everybody. I appreciate all your input and comments. And again, thank you, Kimberly, for all your work on this.
You bet. Have a great day, everyone.
All right.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. Bye-bye.